My mom skipped my wedding for my brother's party and called me an unplanned child. That day, I made her regret it for the rest of her life. My mother admitted to hating me simply because I was an unplanned child. At my wedding, my parents chose my brother's party over mine. This is the story of how my family relationships completely collapsed after I married Emily, who is 25 years old and female. I am 26 years old, male, and in my final year of medical school. My mother has consistently favored my older brother Marcus, who is 27 years old, over me. She has loved Marcus since we were children and never hid her preference. I'm unsure what makes him her favorite. My parents chose to give me to my grandparents to raise for 8 years after I was born. Only 1 year after Marcus, taking care of both Marcus and me simultaneously was too much for my mother to handle. According to my grandparents, my mother struggled with postpartum depression. My grandparents, George and Eleanor Cooper, saw the seriousness of her illness and didn't fight too hard to keep me with my parents. My father, Robert, 52 years old and tall, was unable to care for me by himself while working. I grew up in my grandparents' loving and content home, feeling safe and secure because, as a newborn, I was unaware they weren't my biological parents. However, things changed when I was old enough to walk and comprehend speech. Occasionally, my parents would visit and explain that they were my biological parents and that I was only temporarily staying with my grandparents. For me, these visits were always perplexing and bittersweet. I was thrilled to see my parents, but I also felt bewildered and desolate after they left. After playing and chatting with me for 2 to 3 hours, my parents would say farewell and return home, taking Marcus with them. I realized that Marcus was always their top focus. As this pattern persisted, my parents' infrequent visits made me feel unwelcome, even though my grandparents gave me all the love and attention they could. When I turned 8 years old, my parents finally took me back home. I was initially thrilled to reunite with my family, but that excitement gradually subsided as I realized how much better my life had been with my grandparents. One of the first adjustments I had to make was sharing a room with Marcus. My parents had the option of giving me a spare bedroom, but Marcus had always had his own. They insisted we share a room so Marcus and I could become closer as brothers. However, Marcus made it clear he detested this new arrangement. Marcus would label me a brat and a stranger if I read comic books my grandparents had bought me or played too loudly. He would scoff and call me childish if I tried to decorate my side of the room with posters or sketches of my favorite superheroes. If I proudly showed my parents my good grades, Marcus would roll his eyes and mockingly call me the teacher's pet. When I practiced playing the keyboard my grandparents had given me, Marcus would tell me I sounded terrible and should give up. He made fun of me for even the smallest things, like how I arranged my toys or described my day. He used terms like dork or nerd whenever I expressed interest in reading or learning something new. I eventually realized that the activities I enjoyed became points of friction. There was a persistent sense of tension and conflict instead of the warmth and welcome I had experienced at my grandparents' house. Everything I did was problematic for Marcus, which made me feel self-conscious. Imagine being teased for every little thing by your older brother, someone you admire. It causes you to question yourself. I was too young to realize he was bullying me. I wanted to blend in with my family because I felt I might be the issue. I stopped reading my comic books at home and only read them in the school library. I completely quit using my keyboard. I did all this hoping that changing myself would make my brother accept me. Unfortunately, Marcus's attitude toward me didn't change despite my efforts to fit in and adapt. I felt like I was losing a piece of myself the more I tried to win his approval. Even after I stopped doing the things that irritated him, Marcus still found ways to make fun of me. Due to a skin problem that has since been treated, I had a lot of pimples as a child. Marcus continuously commented on how awful my face was and how ugly I looked. Hearing this was so painful that I would cry and go to my parents. Instead of standing by me and reprimanding Marcus, my mother, Linda, 50 years old and female, would tell me to stop sobbing and be a man. My dad was also of little help. He would avoid the situation instead of intervening. My mother advised me to confront my brother myself. I felt lost and alone as a result of Marcus's bullying and my parents' inability to provide me with a sense of security and love. I missed the supportive atmosphere I shared with my grandparents, where I always felt appreciated. Whenever they could, my grandparents would visit me and try to speak to Marcus politely, warning him not to bother me. However, he never paid them any attention. As I grew older, I became a very angry teenager. Marcus didn't like it at all when I became taller than him, despite him being older. To annoy me, he would call me Slender Man or Giant because of my height. This time, I began retaliating by calling him a shrimp. I would purposefully place his books on the highest shelf or above the cabinet to prevent him from reaching them without a chair, giving me an excuse to tease him. Though I occasionally got reprimanded for retaliating when he complained to our parents, I felt a mix of delight and remorse. It was satisfying to defend myself, but it also meant our home was growing more antagonistic. We fought more often and fiercely, neither of us willing to give up. The final straw that made my parents' preference for Marcus clear was my school's annual awards ceremony. I was on the verge of winning the top prize in my class since I had put my all into my academics. I hoped for my parents' pride and encouragement, so I wanted their support and attendance at the event. However, a few days before the ceremony, my mother told me Marcus had a swimming competition on the same day. Even though his competition and my ceremony were hours apart, she said Marcus needed her more to focus on his preparation. She told me my dad would be there to support me. Despite my disappointment, I accepted that at least one parent would attend. I was taken aback when my dad unexpectedly failed to show up on the day of the ceremony. Apparently, Marcus had a panic attack before his competition, and my mom contacted my dad immediately saying she needed him there to help Marcus relax. My dad decided not to attend my awards ceremony and instead rushed to Marcus's side. I recall there were no familiar faces in the audience supporting me when I approached to accept my medal. All I could feel was a deep sense of abandonment and loneliness. When I got home later, Marcus and my dad weren't there. When I contacted them, I found out they were still with Marcus. It took them many hours to return, ecstatic and celebrating Marcus's triumph in his contest. They informed me how wonderfully he had done, and he was holding an award as though it were the most important thing of the year. They gave him a tight hug and congratulated him on his achievements. They didn't even offer me an apology for missing my ceremony. It was a sobering reminder of my place in my parents' priorities. In contrast to Marcus, I was often overlooked and undervalued, despite my efforts and accomplishments. This trend persisted throughout my time in college. My parents threw a grand celebration when Marcus was accepted to a nearby public institution, but they hardly noticed my acceptance to medical school. My mother continued to disparage Emily, a talented medical researcher, even after I began dating her. She would say Emily was too focused on her career and not enough on family, suggesting I look for someone more conventional, like Marcus's girlfriend. Let's move on to the primary reason for this writing. 6 months ago, I asked Emily to marry me, and she accepted. When I told my parents about the engagement, out of courtesy and because I wanted them to hear the news from me rather than someone else, I received conflicting responses. My dad thanked me and appeared genuinely delighted for me, but my mom said nothing. Later, she texted me to express how disappointed she was that I hadn't consulted her regarding Emily. 2 months ago, I invited Marcus and everyone else to the wedding, even though he didn't congratulate me after we got engaged. I didn't feel bad about this, and still invited him. I was a little let down when Marcus unexpectedly declined the invitation without providing an explanation. What truly surprised me, though, was when my dad called to let me know that my mom had chosen not to attend my wedding, even though he would be there. I was shocked and asked why my mom wasn't attending. My dad clarified that Marcus had allegedly scheduled an anniversary party for his girlfriend on the same day. I followed Marcus on social media and knew they had recently celebrated their anniversary, so this news seemed strange. I chose to speak with Marcus directly to get clarification rather than initially confronting my mother. Even though we didn't talk much, I wanted to handle the matter with dignity and respect. I called Marcus and asked him directly if he was truly not attending my wedding because of the anniversary party. Marcus surprised me by confirming it was true. He clarified that he and his girlfriend had initially intended to have a party to honor their anniversary, but they lacked the necessary funds, Marcus acknowledged that he had worked hard to find a unique location for their celebration that was within their means to make up for it to his fiancée. Unfortunately, he stated that my wedding day coincided with the venue's only available date. I apologized and politely pointed out that he could have picked a different day, highlighting how much I would have valued his attendance at my wedding. However, Marcus responded that his girlfriend's happiness was more important than anything else and made it clear he wouldn't move their anniversary celebration to fit my wedding schedule. His remarks were hurtful, and he hung up before I could respond. When I called my mother to discuss the matter, she provided the same justification she often gave me. She stressed that my dad was already attending my wedding, so I shouldn't be selfish and ask her to go too, and that Marcus would be upset if she didn't attend his anniversary celebration. My voice nearly broke as I told her how hurtful it was to always feel like she treated me less than my brother. I told her that, although she was free to do as she pleased, I would no longer recognize her as a parent. My mother laughed at what I said and advised me not to get so worked up over my wedding. I decided to stop talking to my mother completely after the argument we had over her decision not to attend my wedding. My attention turned to ensuring Emily had the most exquisite wedding and that our celebration was full of love and happiness. Though I was disappointed with my parents, I was thankful that my dad kept his word and supported me on my special day. My grandparents, who had anticipated my mom's absence despite their encouragement, were naturally saddened and disappointed. They had even warned my mother in advance, stressing how crucial her attendance was. They were deeply affected that she still chose not to go. The situation worsened when Marcus posted photos from his anniversary celebration, in which my mother was seen drinking and dancing uncontrollably. The problem wasn't what she was doing, but the way they both appeared to show off their indifference to my feelings about their absence from my wedding. Throughout the day, my mother never once called Emily or me to say hello or offer congratulations. Though I'm unsure how to move forward, I know I can't allow them to continue harming me in this way. Emily is understandably upset with their treatment of us, particularly regarding our wedding, but she supports any choice I make. Is my desire to sever all contact with my mother and brother an overreaction? Is it time to accept that they will never change and move on with my life without them? Or should I give them another chance to make things right? My wedding was 1 month ago, and since then, things have taken an unexpected turn. I received a ton of encouraging messages after I last posted about my mom choosing my brother's anniversary party over my wedding. I appreciate all your kind remarks and guidance. Here's what has transpired since then. Although my grandparents, George and Eleanor, have always been my staunchest allies, I never thought they would act in such an extreme manner. Last week they told my mother they might remove her from their inheritance and leave me as the sole heir. They said their decision resulted from years of witnessing her ignore me and favor Marcus, not just her missing my wedding. According to my grandmother, she and my mother had a furious discussion during which she detailed all the instances of favoritism she had seen over the years. She cited specific examples, such as my mother's unrelenting criticism of Emily, the disregard for my academic accomplishments, and her decision to attend Marcus's hurriedly organized anniversary party instead of my wedding. My mother's reaction to this news truly surprised me. Within hours of finding out she might lose her inheritance, she called me non-stop. She was crying about the inheritance, not our tense relationship or the harm she had caused. When I finally answered one of her calls, she asked, "How could you have allowed your grandparents to harm me like this? I am their daughter." Then she made a startling suggestion. She recommended that Emily and I hold another wedding ceremony, this time with only close family members. She claimed she wanted to put things right after reflecting on her actions, but when she promptly followed with, "Once we do this, you can tell your grandparents everything is fine between us," her comments seemed insincere. Her attempt to explain her prior absence by stating, "You have to understand, Marcus needed me that day. They had already paid for the location and his partner was going through a difficult moment. What should I have done?" was the most bizarre part. She still couldn't recognize how her decisions had harmed me. Marcus also became involved and texted me furiously. He accused me of manipulating our grandparents and making them hostile to the family. He wrote, "You've always been their favorite, and now you're using that to steal Mom's inheritance." He didn't seem to see the irony in his criticism of favoritism. His girlfriend contacted Emily on social media, claiming we were unkind to Marcus by interfering with their anniversary celebration. Emily replied, "Interesting how you're concerned about your anniversary celebration being ruined when you deliberately scheduled it on our wedding day," before blocking her immediately. My father is now stuck in the middle. Though he attended our wedding, he tried to mediate when he called me yesterday. He remarked, "Your mother truly regrets missing the wedding. Is it not possible for you to perform this minor ceremony for her? It would mean so much." He was silent for a while before acknowledging she's not handling this well, but she does love you, after I pointed out that Mom seemed more focused on the inheritance than our relationship. Emily and I discussed holding another ceremony, but we both felt it wouldn't be genuine. "A wedding isn't just a photo op opportunity," Emily said. "It's about sharing love with those who truly care about us. Your mother had the opportunity to attend but declined. The fact that my mother has begun to alter history is especially upsetting. She's telling her family she was forced to miss the wedding because Marcus needed her assistance during a trying moment, conveniently omitting that it was an anniversary celebration deliberately planned on our wedding day." My aunt, my mom's sister, recently called me to share something fascinating. Before the wedding, my mother had told her she was teaching me a lesson by not attending. She assumed I would give in and reschedule our wedding to accommodate Marcus's party. When that didn't happen, she was genuinely surprised I went ahead with the wedding without her. Last week's phone conversation with Marcus was perhaps the most illuminating. Possibly driven by resentment over the inheritance issue, he revealed in a rare moment of candor that there were other dates available for the anniversary celebration. His fiancée thought it would be lovely to celebrate on the same day as a family wedding, so they chose our wedding date out of several alternatives. "You've always had everything handed to you by our grandparents," he said chillingly when I questioned why he would intentionally harm me. "It's time you experienced what it's like to be disappointed." Through it all, Emily has been my pillar of support. She pointed out something I hadn't considered. My mother's sudden desire for a new ceremony isn't motivated by a wish to celebrate our marriage, but by her desire to appear as a caring mother to our grandparents. Emily noted that if she truly wanted to make amends, she would express regret for years of favoritism rather than attempting to stage a photo op. I am steadfast in my resolve to forego another ceremony. This is about upholding boundaries and self-respect, not retaliation or retribution. My mother had the chance to be present on one of the most significant days of my life, but she declined. That fact cannot be changed by any number of contrived pictures or theatrical rituals. I'm currently not in communication with Marcus and only have sporadic contact with my parents. My grandparents have been very supportive of this choice, telling me that sometimes the best course of action is to avoid harmful people. I'm resolutely pursuing my medical education, while Emily and I focus on creating our future together. Honestly, I feel lighter after standing my ground. Though I realize this update may come across as resentful, it's difficult to know that my brother deliberately tried to overshadow my wedding day, and it's painful that my mother is more concerned with her inheritance than our relationship. However, for the first time in my life, I'm not questioning myself or trying to win their approval. Perhaps learning to accept the family we have while forming the family we need is what it truly means to grow up. Grandfather George called me yesterday to inform me that he and Grandma Eleanor had formally created new wills that excluded my mother entirely and named me as their sole heir. Though I expected this after my previous post, it still surprised me to hear it formally. My grandfather clarified that my mother's treatment of me wasn't the only factor in their decision. They believe I would be able to care for them in their later years more effectively than my mother could. He said they had faith in my abilities to handle their money sensibly as a future doctor, adding, "We trust you won't abandon us to a care facility unless absolutely necessary." As you might imagine, my mother, Linda, has not been pleased with this news. She has been calling and messaging me non-stop, saying I have no right to inherit anything from her parents and that I've deceived her, despite the fact that I haven't received anything yet. It feels as though she believes I'm stealing from her. When I firmly advised her to speak with my grandparents directly about her concerns, she reacted with accusations that I had swayed them in my favor. I reminded her that any changes to their will were a direct result of her actions over the years that caused friction between us and influenced their decision. As our disagreement heated up, she revealed something deeply upsetting. In a moment of raw honesty, or perhaps resentment, she expressed her wish that I had never been born. She accused me of causing her postpartum depression and disclosed that I was an unplanned pregnancy. The most startling revelation was that she had initially considered placing me for adoption to get rid of me but changed her mind due to her parents' conservative beliefs and chose to have them raise me instead. With Marcus, things were always easier, she remarked. He never required the same level of care that you did. I never felt inadequate as a mother because of him. At last, her comments clarified everything. She favored Marcus because she felt guilty and resentful toward me, not because she wanted to love him more. For the first time since the wedding, I contacted my father, Robert, after that conversation. He admitted that some of my mom's statements about my unplanned pregnancy and her struggles with postpartum depression were accurate, but he said he never regretted having me. After I explained how their years of favoritism toward Marcus had deeply wounded me, he genuinely apologized for the first time. My dad has acknowledged my decision to give him some space, though I'm unsure how our relationship will proceed. He now seems to realize how his passive role in my upbringing fueled the family's dysfunction. Given how much I admired Marcus when we were younger, I sent him one final text. I told him how he could have been a better, more encouraging brother when I moved back home with our parents. I spoke openly about how lonely I felt growing up with our grandparents and how much I desired his approval. I made it clear I held no grudges against him for being Mom's favorite, but I informed him he had the choice to be a supportive part of my life, rather than compete with me as an older brother. I also expressed my disappointment in him and said I was ending our connection. I've blocked his number and don't currently plan to unblock it anytime soon. Through it all, Emily has been my staunchest ally. Every day she reminds me that family is about people who choose to love and support you unconditionally, not just genetic ties. Together, we're focusing on building our future, and I know I can handle any obstacles because she's by my side. Though hearing my mother's admission about my birth and her animosity toward me was upsetting, it was also somewhat freeing. It finally clarified the pattern of behavior I had encountered throughout my life. While it doesn't always erase the hurt, understanding why someone harmed you can help you realize their behavior was never about your worth as a person. I appreciate all your support along the way. When I was doubting myself, your messages and remarks kept me going. It really helped to know I wasn't alone in dealing with familial favoritism. I'd especially like to thank those who shared similar experiences. Through this process, I may have lost some family members, but I've gained self-respect, clarity, and the courage to prioritize my own well-being. That can sometimes be the greatest legacy we can have.